Good evening, everyone. Last year, the world's billionaires became $5 trillion richer, while workers were struggling to keep COVID at bay, pay rent, and put food on the table. Inflation is at its highest level in 4 decades, housing costs are through the roof, and at the same time, the corporate landlords and politicians are removing eviction moratoriums and other basic renter protections. The system of capitalism is in crisis, and make no mistake, the billionaires want workers to pay for it. Workers are realizing that if we are to defend ourselves against the ongoing assault on our living standards, if we want to win safety at work and our most basic rights, we need a union. Of course, the bosses know this also, and that's why they're fighting ferociously against every unionizing drive, every hint of organizing. While Starbucks executives pose as progressives, saying, quote, "we are not anti-union, we are just pro-partner," end quote, that at the same time, they are threatening workers and closing down stores temporarily to shut down union drives. This is nothing new. During our fight to make Seattle the first major city to pass the $15 minimum wage, big business recognized that we had won broad public support and that it would be a mistake to openly oppose the new minimum wage. So they said they were prepared to consider it, but it was just a question of getting it right, but that the movement and the socialists did not know how to get it right, and that we were not civil. Meanwhile, they launched 3 big business groups to fight all out against the $15 minimum wage. They pretended that they were small business groups, but then it came out that big corporations like Starbucks and McDonald's were funding them. When it was clear that the bosses could not win because our movement was too strong, they shifted strategy. They fought to pass every possible corporate loophole in the minimum wage law. They even had the gall to say these loopholes would make the law stronger, that they were just concerned about the workers. And then after we won the $15 an hour, they launched a lawsuit, which they lost. Woo! We won, and we learned. We learned that if we are going to win something under this rotten system, then we are going to have to wrench it from the hands of the bosses. That is also why I am a socialist. Because if this system requires a superhuman effort by working people just to get our needs, basic needs met, then we need a new system. This word partner that Starbucks likes to use reminds me of how some of the bosses here like to talk about how their corporations are just like a family when they're fighting tooth and nail against our movements. Corporate politicians in Seattle like to talk about how woke they are too, but again and again when it comes down to dollars and cents, they side with the bosses. They did it again just last month when every Democrat on the Seattle City Council voted to end hazard pay for grocery workers. In fact, Councilmember Mosqueda, who is the most high-profile, self-described progressive Democrat and claims to represent the labor movement, sponsored that bill. This was an absolute scandal. As workers explained at our press conference this morning, that hazard pay was not only basic decency, it is an essential safety measure. Workers should not be so stretched that they feel forced to go to work sick even with COVID. This afternoon, we won in upholding the grocery worker hazard pay. But it was only because workers fought back and we used our Socialist Council office to expose the Democrats. And even then, 3 of those Democrats voted to end the hazard pay, and the council president, who was one of them, scolded me for not being civil. Contrary to the Democrats, our council office is an independent socialist office. And as a 4-time elected representative of Seattle's working people and a rank and file member of the American Federation of Teachers, Local 1789, I am honored to stand alongside courageous Starbucks workers and to bring forward this resolution in solidarity with them. As Bia said, I introduced the resolution today at the press conference alongside the workers. It won't be voted on until next Tuesday at the earliest, so we need to continue fighting. By voting yes on this resolution, City Council members would take a stand with Starbucks workers rather than just saying woke things when they don't matter. They would call on Starbucks Corporation to accept card check neutrality, which is recognizing a union when the majority of a workforce signs union cards and committing to allow employees to discuss unionization free from threats, intimidation, anti-union propaganda, anti-union meetings, and lawsuits. If Starbucks workers in Seattle unionize, the resolution further urges Starbucks to bargain a fair contract such that the workers can have good standards of living and the company's overwhelming wealth does not flow just to the top executives and shareholders. Last but not least, the resolution recommends all workers in Seattle organize into unions to collectively fight for better wages, benefits, and working conditions. So it's very simple with this resolution. If you as a politician claim to be pro-worker and pro-union, then you should vote yes on it and not attempt to water it down. If you vote no or try to water down the resolution, then you are showing yourself to be anti-worker and anti-union. You are siding with the exploitative billionaires and multimillionaires. So, ask all council members, which side are you on? Let's take a moment to understand what's at stake here. Starbucks has nearly 9,000 stores nationally that are directly company-owned, or over 15,000 if you include grocery stores and other affiliated locations. It is a behemoth of a corporation with $29 billion in revenue last year. If Starbucks workers succeed in building a union, and not only building a union but winning a fair contract, this will be nothing short of an earthquake. It will be unprecedented in the massive fast food industry and the first successful union drive on this giant scale in the US private sector in decades. Let's also understand what it will take to rapidly organize as many Starbucks stores as possible. We will need a class struggle approach to win. There can be no illusion that the bosses will be on our side. They will fight tooth and nail against us.
That's right.
In Seattle, our working class movement has beaten Amazon and Starbucks and Seattle's wealthiest corporations and landlords again and again, not by trying to convince them to be kind, but by getting organized and fighting back. It's crucial we learn the lessons from the history of union organizing and class struggle. As both history shows and as the Starbucks workers are showing right now, power at the bargaining table comes from power outside. It is not through clever moral arguments that we win, but by our organizing power in the workplaces and on the streets. That's why we are talking with Starbucks workers about a national day of action to help spread the unionizing struggle, because that is what is needed to win unions at hundreds of stores and to build the momentum of this fight and the demands instead of allowing Starbucks executives to seize the narrative. For workers to coordinate in a nationwide campaign with powerful demands and in unity against the billionaire Starbucks bosses, this is what we need. And we need strike actions and walkouts such as we have already seen. Toward this end, and as I announced this morning, I am donating $10,000 from my Solidarity Fund to Starbucks workers organizing. As many of you know, as a representative of Seattle's working class, I accept only the average worker's wage and donate the rest of my six-figure salary, which is lavish compared to what most workers make, to a Solidarity Fund. Another crucial lesson is that our greatest power comes from withholding our labor. Nothing moves in this system unless the workers make it happen. We have the power to shut everything down. Starbucks workers have just demonstrated this in action. Soon after winning their union, Buffalo workers went on a 5-day strike and forced the company to concede on a major demand to give workers paid time for quarantine and self-isolation if they are exposed to COVID, and they won this for workers company-wide. This is a huge victory which will benefit their fellow workers in every Starbucks store across the nation, and it only happened because they exercised their power to strike. The history of union organizing in the US also shows that we need to win a large majority of our fellow workers over to support the union before we file for election. That's because as soon as we file, we know the bosses will begin their anti-union propaganda and threats. As a general rule, we want to have at least 2/3 of our workers prepared to sign union cards before taking the next steps. And this is what the Starbucks worker organizing is doing. I want to talk a little bit about the importance of demands, because I know there is some debate in our movement at present about whether demands are needed early in organizing or only after the union is won and you're going to negotiate. I think it is crucial to begin discussion on demands early, and ideally to coordinate also regionally and nationally to bring strong demands nationwide that can inspire your fellow workers to get into the fight, to help them understand why they need a union and what having a union can do for them. And this is true not only in these unionization drives, but this is true in social movements and in working class election campaigns. We would never have won our first election, let alone any of the other subsequent victories, had we not made it 100% clear that we are all out for these concrete demands. In our first city council campaign, we made $15 an hour minimum wage the main campaign demand, and we won that a few months after taking office. We would never have defeated the recall campaign against us last year had we not fought for and helped build the movement that won the historic Amazon tax that we had campaigned on in our election campaign the year before. In all these cases, working people were invested in the fight, whether for the Amazon tax or to defeat the right-wing attack against our socialist office. It was right-wing. We need workers to feel fully invested in the struggle to unionize, because they are going to hear all kinds of lies from the bosses. Lies like the recall campaign was not right-wing. We will need to counter those lies. Some of those lies will be that Starbucks workers don't need a union, that the union only wants your dues, that you are partners of this company, that the union is not going to do anything for you. Well, of course, if the unions allegedly did not do anything, then why is Starbucks so terrified of them? But beyond fighting back against the boss's propaganda, we also need to explain clearly what the union is fighting for, not only in principle, but also materially, what the workers who are organizing stand for, what we can win. This is an incredibly important discussion for us, an incredibly important rally, and as others have said, this is for the long haul, this is just the beginning. We have a lot of organizing to do, and we have a union to win. Solidarity.